There are those who try to dumb down the economic debate in Barbados. There are those that there's nothing government can do with a global recession. There are those who try to argue there is no policy that matters other than past policies and I'm confident that Barbadians will reject being dumbed down, being sidetracked, the attempt to avoid a debate on the real issues and tackling the real issues, however hard those issues may be. Barbadians are serious people. That's why you have braved the weather today to come here and listen to a debate on economics. It is well encapsulated by the seriousness of the presentations of my colleagues that you've already heard. And I must say, too, by the seriousness of the analysis presented by the Leader of the Opposition on CLICO, on government expenditure, and on the economy. My colleagues have given a very good presentation of the economic analysis of the last two recessions in Barbados. I'm going to touch on the international situation, how we compare in fiscal policy and economic performance with what's happening globally. And then I'm going to end by talking about what we can do today to change the current trajectory of the economy. This was not the first global recession, not the first global financial crash. On some estimates, it's the 85th financial crash. Crashes follow booms. It is a lesson that we need to have an economy that is resilient to an international economy that regularly booms and busts. That boom and bust was caused by poor regulatory policy, poor monetary policy, and poor fiscal policy, primarily in the United States of America, but also in Europe. The weakest point of the global economy took place in the 12 months from June 2008 to June 2009. Since then, the global economy has been recovering. It doesn't feel like a recovery because it's a very patchy recovery. And even in places which are growing, the unemployment rates remain high. But it's important to underscore how patchy the global picture is. Countries like China and India are recording 9% growth this year. They're not in recession. Brazil is close behind. Singapore and Hong Kong have rebounded very strongly. Half of the states in Africa, over 20 countries, are showing more than 5% growth this year. The Latin countries are also growing strongly. The idea that there is a single global recession and that all of us share the same fate, whatever we do, is a false idea. We need to rid ourselves of this fatalism. We are the captains of our fate. What happens to us depends upon our own policies, our own responses, and how we plan and strategize for the future. Let me touch on fiscal policy. Around the world, government deficits have grown and public debts have increased sharply. But the fiscal position is actually very different in Barbados compared to the rest of the world. In the rest of the world, fiscal deficits have increased because tax revenues have collapsed. In the recession, taxes have fallen, and governments have chosen not to respond by increasing taxes, but allowing the weakened economy to deliver lower tax revenues. 90% of the increase in fiscal deficits around the world has been caused by falling tax revenues. 90%. In Barbados, our tax revenues have not fallen. That is because the government instituted a range of tax-raising measures in the 2008 budget and in 2009, which meant that remarkably, in this major recession, tax revenues in Barbados are almost at the same level today as they were in 2007. This is a result of a very different policy response, a result of raising taxes, raising fees, raising charges. Our deficit, then, is not caused by collapsing revenues, but a massive increase in expenditure. A massive increase in expenditure. Now, if I was on Mars and you told me there was a massive increase in expenditure, I would say, okay, one-off capital expenditure. But that's not why our expenditure has increased. One-off capital expenditure has increased by around $40 million per year compared to previous years. We've had a massive increase in concurrent expenditure. And as the last two speakers have indicated, this has also been reflected in an unprecedented, substantial increase in the government deficit on current account. We are not raising revenues to meet our current expenditures in a way that we have never been in before. Now, you could say that a tax and spend policy is viable, that the government, there is a viable strategy to raise revenues and to spend it very wisely, to spend it in accordance with a plan, with a strategy that gives you targets as to what you're trying to achieve, an employment target, an investment target. The problem is we've had a massive increase in concurrent expenditure without a plan, without a strategy, and that's why there are no targets. If this was one-off capital expenditure, and I think this is one of the points that Clyde was making, then we could recover the situation by stopping a continuing set of capital expenditure. But this is concurrent expenditure. This is your wages and salaries. This is your everyday expenditure. It's going to be very hard to turn that ship around. In a matter of 2.5 years, our public debt has increased by $1.5 billion. A huge increase. Never before in the history of Barbados has public debt increased by that amount at that pace. And that is why we are today sitting on the cusp of being declared junk bond status by the international credit rating agencies. Now, you and I could come up with many arguments for why the credit rating agencies can be a bit bizarre in what they do. But it's like a cricket team complaining about the pitch they're playing on. Everyone plays on the same pitch. Both sides will play on that pitch. We all play the game. And the game of international finance, whether we like it or not, whether we reject it or not, is that it is driven by credit rating agencies.